Right now, major tech companies they're swimming in hundreds of billions of dollars in record profits. I mean,
Fucker.
just last year, Amazon alone posted staggering revenues, well over $700 billion.
Right. The market caps of these giants are, frankly, just astronomical.
Exactly. And yet, if you look at the real-time trackers today, on average, 897 tech workers will lose their jobs today.
Wow.
Yeah. And another 897 will lose their jobs tomorrow, and another 897 the day after that.
It's a really profound contradiction. You have this environment of just immense corporate wealth, and it's running completely parallel to this massive, seemingly relentless wave of human displacement.
Welcome to the low hire, low fire paradox. Today is May 7, 2026, and we are unpacking an employment landscape that feels, frankly, terrifying if you're standing on the wrong side of it.
It really is.
We are not just casually scanning the news today either. We are undertaking a massive deep dive into navigating this incredibly complex, rapidly shifting job market. The anxiety out there is just palpable.
Yeah, definitely. If you look at the skill sensor data for this year alone, we are seeing over 113,000 individuals impacted across, I think, 179 layoff events.
Which is wild. And because we want to actually help you navigate this, we've brought the receipts.
We really have. That skill sensor data is just the tip of the spear. We have aggregated this immense stack of 2026 workforce analytics to make sense of all this.
Right, like the LHH Mobility Breakdown Report.
Exactly. We also have live layoff trackers, like Layoff Hedge. We've pulled financial advisories from Schwab, Fidelity, and the Financial Counseling Association of America.
And we are also breaking down global market reports from Paul Hastings and the CIO Investment Club.
Because you need that macro view.
You really do. But because macroeconomic white papers don't always reflect what it actually feels like to, try and get a job right now, we are pairing all of that with real on-the-ground insights from Reddit communities.
Job search platforms, too, like Final Round AI and Cherry Behart.
Right. So the ultimate mission of this deep dive is to construct a comprehensive, actionable roadmap for you, the listener. We want to decode these specific 2026 economic shifts so you can adapt.
Which means we need to tackle this from a few different angles. We're going to map out how to balance immediate financial safety with your long-term strategic career growth.
You have to survive the short term to win the long term.
Exactly. And we'll decode the new technical mandates, like what employers actually mean when they demand AI skills. Plus, we're going to look very closely at how global economic restructuring is changing, where the safest jobs actually are.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the way I see it, looking at all this data, the 2026 economy isn't really a ladder anymore. It's more like a game of musical chairs, but half the chairs are being replaced by server racks and AI data centers.
I love that analogy. It captures the underlying physics of this market perfectly. Because if you just look at the headline numbers, right, the national unemployment rate is sitting at a historically moderate 4.4%.
Which sounds totally fine on paper.
Right. To an economist looking at a spreadsheet from 10 years ago, 4.4% looks like a really healthy, near full employment economy.
But it doesn't feel healthy to anyone actually in it. I mean, it feels incredibly volatile, which brings us to that low fire paradox you mentioned earlier.
Yes, also known as invisible unemployment.
Right. Let's break that down.
So what we are experiencing is not a traditional recessionary collapse. In a normal recession, consumer demand plummets. Nobody is buying anything, and companies just slash their workforce across the board out of sheer desperation.
But that isn't happening now. Consumer spending is relatively stable.
Exactly. What we are seeing instead is this structural great reallocation. Major companies are laying people off in highly targeted divisions, and simultaneously, they are completely freezing their entry-level and mid-level hiring.
So they aren't bleeding out, they're amputating specific limbs.
That's a grim way to put it, but yes.
The skill sensor and layoff hedge data, along with reports from Time Tracks, show these jaw-dropping numbers. We have Oracle cutting 30,000 employees.
30,000?
Yeah. UPS cutting 30,000 operational roles, too, explicitly citing something they call their network of the future, which actually involved closing 24 facilities.
And Amazon cutting 16,000 white-collar roles on top of the 14,000 they cut back in late 2025.
It's massive, and it extends far beyond tech and logistics into high finance.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cities is in the middle of cutting 20,000 jobs. But the strategy behind Citi's cuts is incredibly revealing about the broader trend.
Yes.
Well, they are engaging in a process called juniorization. So they aren't just trimming the bottom like entry-level roles, they are actively targeting managing directors and highly paid senior executives.
Oh, wow. So they're going after the big salaries.
Right. They're stripping out that expensive veteran talent and replacing the output with either lower-cost junior employees or heavily automated technology.
So the latter is being chopped off at the very top and the very bottom simultaneously, leaving this totally hollowed out middle.
That's exactly what's happening.
But I keep coming back to the underlying mechanism here. Why is this happening right now across so many highly profitable companies? Like, if Amazon has record cash flow, why gut the white-collar workforce?
It all comes down to a fundamental shift in how Wall Street values corporate spending. Specifically, it's the difference between operational expenditure, or OpEx, and capital expenditure, which is CapEx.
Okay, let's break those down for the listener. OpEx, operational expenditure, is the day-to-day cost of running the business, which includes human payroll.
Correct. And on a company's income statement, OpEx hits the bottom line immediately. So every dollar you pay an employee is a dollar subtracted from your quarterly profit.
Right.
Capital expenditure, on the other hand, involves buying physical assets or long-term infrastructure. Under accounting rules, you don't take the full hit of CapEx all at once. You depreciate that cost over many years.
Ah, I see. So if Amazon fires a marketing manager, their quarterly profit immediately looks better?
Exactly.
And then if they take that manager's salary and use it to buy a $1 million server rack for an AI data center, they get the asset, but the cost is spread out over a decade.
Right, which makes the company look incredibly lean and profitable to shareholders right now.
So it's basically an accounting trick to look better on paper while building up infrastructure?
You've isolated the exact financial incentive. Companies are aggressively slashing human payroll, their OpEx, to free up cash flow to fund massive artificial intelligence data centers and custom silicon development, which is their CapEx.
The numbers are just crazy. Meta has committed $135 billion to their AI initiatives.
Unbelievable.
And Amazon is projecting $200 billion in capital expenditure for 2026, dropping $35 billion a quarter on generative AI infrastructure alone.
The scale of that is hard to fathom, honestly. We are talking about capital investment that makes the late 1990s telecom bubble look like a rounding error.
Yeah. And to justify gutting the workforce to pay for all these servers, corporate leadership is pushing this narrative of eliminating what they call the bureaucracy tax.
Right, the bureaucracy tax is just the polite, shareholder-friendly term for middle management.
Gotta love corporate jargon.
Yeah. During the pandemic boom, tech companies engaged in massive talent hoarding. They hired tens of thousands of people just to ensure their competitors couldn't hire them.
Right, I remember that.
Well, now they're unwinding that. Amazon's Project Dawn is a prime example. It was explicitly designed to remove layers of management so the massive corporation could operate more like a nimble startup.
Right. And the logic is that fewer human managers mean faster decision-making velocity, allowing the company to better leverage its new AI infrastructure.
Exactly.
I mean, I see the financial logic, but there is a massive data discrepancy that really bothers me here.
What's that?
If hundreds of thousands of people are losing their jobs so companies can build these data centers, why isn't that 4.4% headline unemployment rate spiking to like 8 or 10%?
Oh.
Where's the evidence of this in the weekly jobless claims?
Well, the evidence is being masked by what economists are calling the severance shield.
The severance shield.
Yeah. When a company like Amazon or UPS executes these massive layoffs, they aren't just, locking the doors and kicking people to the curb that afternoon.
They usually have legal obligations.
Right. They're utilizing 90-day warn periods where employees are essentially put on paid leave to look for internal roles. They're offering generous buyouts and voluntary separation packages.
So a displaced worker might officially lose their role in January, but they are still technically receiving a paycheck or a lump sum that keeps them legally off the unemployment rolls until April or May.
Exactly. The shock to the system is delayed.
Delayed and diffused. So the severance shield protects the individual's income temporarily, which is good, obviously, but it creates this massive false sense of security in the macroeconomic data.
Right. The government isn't seeing the displacement because the displaces aren't filing for benefits yet.
I want to look at the other side of this corporate strategy, though, because according to the LHH Mobility Breakdown Report, which surveyed 3,000 HR leaders, 87% of them plan to execute layoffs this year.
That's a huge percentage.
Yeah. But simultaneously, 77% of those exact same HR leaders claim they have robust, targeted redeployment programs designed to keep their talent internally.
Right, the redeployment programs.
So here's my question for you. If they know their employees and they have these redeployment programs, how is there such a massive disconnect? Are companies just incapable of mapping the skills of the people they already pay?
That is arguably the most glaring inefficiency in the 2026 corporate landscape.
Yeah.
The LEH report actually frames this as the layoff cost paradox.
Okay, what is that?
So, of the employers who rigorously track their hiring metrics, 73% openly admit that laying someone off, paying their severance, and then recruiting, hiring, and training a new person externally costs significantly more money than just redeploying their internal talent.
Wait, really? They know it costs more to fire and rehire, but they do it anyway?
Yes.
That seems to completely contradict the hyper-efficiency mandate they're using to justify the layoffs in the first place.
It absolutely does, and the root cause is a systemic visibility failure within human resources. You noted that 77% of leaders say redeployment programs exist. Well, the data shows that only 19% of employees actually experience or even know about those programs.
Wow. There's a 58 percentage point perception gap there.
Exactly. The reality is that massive corporations lack the internal skills analytics to identify which of their current employees could be successfully retrained for the new AI-driven roles.
So they have no idea that the logistics coordinator they are firing today actually has a background in data analytics that could be perfect for the AI deployment team they are trying to staff tomorrow.
Exactly the problem.
Yeah.
Add to that the pervasive culture of talent hoarding among middle managers, where managers literally hide their best performers from other internal departments so their own metrics don't slip, and HR is left flying totally blind.
It's so dysfunctional.
It is. So they execute these blunt force layoffs because they literally don't have the granular data required to do surgical internal redeployment.
Which leads to companies making decisions that might look great on a quarterly earnings call, but are functionally disastrous in practice. The Klarna cautionary tale in our notes is fascinating. Let's walk the listener through what happened there.
Yeah, the Klarna scenario is rapidly becoming a textbook case study in the limits of current AI deployment.
What exactly did they do?
They cut roughly 700 customer support roles, and leadership was very public, almost boastful, about the fact that their new proprietary AI assistant was doing the equivalent work of those 700 full-time human agents.
Right, I remember that. The stock market completely cheered.
Mm-hmm.
The narrative was that Klarna had cracked the code on infinite scalability without human overhead.
And the market loved it initially. But the structural realignment report tracked the aftermath. What Klarna discovered was that while AI is exceptional at handling the 80% of routine, standardized customer inquiries like, where is my refund or reset my password, it is basically catastrophic at handling the 20% of edge cases.
Ah, right.
Yeah, when a user had a highly complex, emotionally charged, multivariable problem, the AI would just loop or hallucinate policies or simply infuriate the customer.
Because it lacks human judgment and empathy. So, customer service quality metrics tanked, and they faced internal revolts from the remaining staff who had to clean up the algorithmic messes.
Which forced them to quietly begin rehiring human agents to handle the escalations.
Wow.
It raises a highly pertinent question about the current macro environment. If the current generation of generative AI doesn't actually deliver the massive productivity dividend that Wall Street expects, we might see a frantic, very expensive wave of rehiring by 2027 as companies realize they cut way too deep into the bone.
It's like performative cruelty for shareholders that completely backfires.
That's one way to look at it, yeah.
But as interesting as it is to theorize about what Amazon or Klarna will do in 2027, that speculation does not pay your rent today.
No, it doesn't.
If the macro reality is a relentless pivot from human payroll to AI servers, the immediate micro reality for you, the listener, is financial survival if you get caught in that pivot. So let's talk strategic financial defense, because getting that calendar invite from HR on a Tuesday morning is an absolute emotional gut punch.
Oh, without a doubt. And the experts from the Financial Counseling Association of America are unanimous on the first step.
Mm-hmm.
You must take a pause.
A pause.
Yes. The psychological shock of a layoff triggers a massive fight-or-flight response.
Yeah.
The instinct is to immediately open LinkedIn, update your status to open to work, and rage apply to 100 jobs in an afternoon.
Which is the worst possible thing you can do because a panicked job seeker makes terrible strategic and financial decisions.
Exactly. You have to emotionally process the shock, the frustration, and the sudden loss of identity before you engage with the market. Step away from the keyboard. Take a few days.
Just breathe.
Let the adrenaline leave your system. Only when your head is clear do you sit down and systematically review your severance package.
And reading these advisories, it becomes really clear that you actually have to look at it. It's not just a receipt, it's a legal contract.
Right.
The worst mistake is signing the first piece of paper they slide across the desk without understanding the mechanics of the payout.
Understanding the mechanics is totally vital. You need to verify all deadlines. You need to understand if the severance is being paid out as a single lump sum or distributed over time as salary continuation.
And that makes a huge difference for taxes,
A
right?
huge difference. A lump sum might push you into a higher tax bracket for the year, whereas salary continuation might delay your eligibility to file for state unemployment benefits. Furthermore, if you are a mid to senior level employee, the terms of that severance are frequently negotiable.
That's a great point. Once you know the exact amount of cash coming in, the Schwab MoneyWise guide recommends sitting down and calculating your precise runway.
The runway calculation is the foundation of your entire strategy. You take your liquid savings, add your expected guaranteed income, which is your post-tax severance and verified unemployment benefits, and you divide that total number by your monthly crisis budget expenses.
A crisis budget. I'm assuming that means a ruthless audit of your bank
Oh,
statements.
absolutely ruthless.
Like, no dining out, canceling the 5 different streaming platforms you forgot you were paying for, and pausing any aggressive debt payoff strategies, reverting to only making the bare minimum payments to keep your credit intact.
It requires extreme financial discipline.
Yeah.
You're trying to determine a very specific number. Exactly how many months can you survive before you hit zero?
Right.
Knowing that you have a 4-month runway versus a 9-month runway changes everything about how you search for your next role. It dictates what salary you can accept, what geographic moves you can consider, and what industries you can afford to pivot into.
One of the most terrifying variables in that crisis budget calculation, especially for our listeners in the U.S., is health insurance.
It is invariably the largest shock to the system. Under the COBRA Act, you are legally entitled to continue your exact employer-provided health coverage for up to 18 months.
But there's a catch.
A massive catch. The structural catch is that you are now responsible for the entire premium. When you were employed, your company likely subsidized 70 to 80% of that cost. Under COBRA, you pay your share, the employer's massive former share, plus a 2% administrative fee.
Which means a premium that felt like, what, $200 a paycheck could suddenly transform into $2,500 a month out of pocket.
Easily.
That is a devastating blow to a crisis budget. And reading the Fidelity and Schwab advisories, this is the exact moment when people start eyeing their retirement accounts thinking, I have to tap my 401k just to keep my family insured.
And the financial advisors are practically screaming, do not do it.
Yeah, they really are.
The consensus among financial planners is that tapping a 401k prior to retirement age should only be done to prevent imminent homelessness. The mechanics of an early withdrawal are brutally punitive.
Because of the taxes.
Right. First, the entire amount you withdraw is added to your gross income for the year, subjecting it to federal and state income taxes. On top of that, the IRS slaps you with the 10% early withdrawal penalty. You could easily lose 30 to 40% of the money you pull out straight to taxes.
It's so painful. To use an old farming analogy, taking money out of your 401k in your 30s or 40s is like eating your seed corn.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it absolutely solves your hunger today, but it ruins your harvest tomorrow. When the season turns and it's time to retire, you have nothing left in the ground to grow. You lose decades of compound interest.
That is an excellent way to visualize the long-term damage. The math is incredibly unforgiving. However, there is a specific, lesser-known exception hidden in the tax code that displaced older workers need to know about. The Rule of 55.
I saw that in the notes. How does that work?
So if you are laid off, fired, or even quit your job in the calendar year you turn 55 or older, IRS rules permit you to withdraw funds from your most recent employer's 401k plan without paying that 10% early withdrawal penalty.
Oh.
Yeah. You are still liable for the standard income tax on the distribution, but dodging that 10% penalty can save you thousands of dollars and extend your runway significantly if you are an older worker facing ageism in the job hunt.
That is a critical piece of leverage. What other specific financial maneuvers are buried in these advisories that people might miss in a panic?
There is a highly technical but incredibly important strategy involving something called net unrealized appreciation, or NUA.
Anyway,
This applies if you hold highly appreciated company stock inside your workplace 401k.
so let's say I work for a massive tech company, and part of my 401k match over the last 10 years was in company stock, and that stock has tripled in value.
Exactly this scenario.
Yep.
When people get laid off, standard financial advice is to roll your 401k over to an IRA to consolidate your accounts and keep things organized.
Makes sense.
But if you blindly roll that appreciated company stock into an IRA, you make a massive tax error. Money that eventually comes out of an IRA is taxed at your ordinary income tax rate.
Which could be very high.
Very high. But if you utilize the NUA rules, you can distribute the company stock in kind to a taxable brokerage account. You only pay ordinary income tax on the original cost basis of the stock, what it was worth when you acquired it.
Oh, I see.
Right. The appreciation, the amount the stock grew over those 10 years, is taxed at the much lower long-term capital gains rate when you eventually sell it.
Wow. So doing the default responsible thing of rolling everything into an IRA could accidentally erase massive tax advantages and cost you thousands.
Yes, exactly.
It really proves why you have to understand the mechanics of your severance and retirement before making sudden moves.
And understanding those mechanics also informs another major strategy recommended by the Financial Counseling Association: taking a mediocre job with benefits.
The stopgap job.
Yes. If you calculate your runway and realize you only have 3 months of cash, taking a job that is far below your skill level, perhaps a shift manager at a retail store or an administrative assistant role, preserves your cash flow and, crucially, secures subsidized health insurance.
Right, which takes away the panic.
It stops the financial bleeding while you continue to hunt for a career-aligned role on the side.
We are actually seeing this mechanism play out in real time right now, with the massive plant closures happening across the country.
Yeah, definitely.
The layoff trackers noted that Tyson Foods is closing several aging facilities in states like Nebraska and Texas, displacing almost 5,000 workers overnight.
And those local economies cannot absorb 5,000 unemployed meatpackers in a single week.
No, they can't. So what you see are state-level unemployment agencies and retraining funds mobilizing immediately. Nebraska and Texas hold massive informational sessions at the local community colleges to connect those displaced workers directly with state-funded stopgap resources, subsidized retraining programs, and temporary roles.
The strategy is to utilize every single safety net available to stabilize the perimeter.
You must secure your financial perimeter first, you build the runway, and you stabilize your basic human needs. Okay, so let's say the listener has done exactly that. The crisis budget is locked, the COBRA is accounted for, or they've jumped on a spouse's plan, and the runway is calculated at, let's say, 6 solid months.
A good place to be.
Right. The next step is assessing their actual market value in 2026. Because as we dive into the data, it's clear the anxiety right now isn't just about losing a paycheck. It's an existential panic about whether your skills even matter to the market anymore.
This represents a profound psychological shift in the modern workforce. The LHH Career Redeployment Report actually isolated this phenomenon, finding that 56% of employees now fear their current skills are becoming entirely irrelevant.
Over half. That's huge.
It is. LHH has formalized this metric as the skills confidence gap.
The skills confidence gap, it's a heavy term. Historically, employee anxiety was usually outward-facing.
Right.
You know, you worried about the macro economy crashing or you worried your company's product was losing market share.
Right.
But this is intensely inward-facing. It's the realization that your company might be generating record profits, but the specific tasks you have spent a decade mastering, say, generating financial models in Excel or writing basic marketing copy, are now being executed instantly and flawlessly by an algorithmic API.
It is the fear of personal obsolescence.
Yeah.
And employers are radically shifting how they evaluate talent because of this technological leap.
How so?
We have compelling data from NCEE, the National Association of Colleges and Employers, reporting that nearly 70% of employers have officially transitioned to skills-based hiring matrices rather than strictly requiring 4-year degrees.
The pedigree doesn't matter anymore. They don't
Yeah.
care if you spent $200,000 at a private university. They just want to know if you can execute the workflow.
Exactly. And what employers desperately want you to execute are what they call new-collar jobs. Yes. These are roles that are built entirely around the application, management, and oversight of artificial intelligence. To give you a sense of the scale, AI proficiency has transitioned from a niche bonus skill to a mandatory must-have requirement in 41% of all tech job listings this year.
But the definitions of these tech roles are becoming incredibly fragmented and, frankly, confusing.
Very much so.
We found this fascinating thread on Reddit where people within the tech industry were intensely debating the difference between traditional software engineers, data scientists, and these new AI engineers.
It's a very revealing debate about the changing nature of software development.
Yeah, one user, a highly upvoted commenter who works as a senior data scientist, pointed out that a massive portion of these newly titled AI engineers actually know very little about the underlying mathematical architecture of artificial intelligence. They couldn't build a neural network from scratch if their life depended on it. What they are, essentially, are traditional software engineers who have become exceptionally skilled at building the bridge between a company's software and a massive language model.
Yes, exactly.
They are building apps that send requests to an LLM API, like plugging their company's database directly into ChatGPT's brain.
That Reddit observation perfectly captures the current market reality. A company like, say, a mid-sized logistics firm doesn't need to hire 5 PhDs to build a custom artificial intelligence model from the ground up.
Right, that would be a waste of money.
They just need pragmatic, adaptable builders who can take an existing, incredibly powerful AI model from OpenAI or Anthropic and stitch it into their existing consumer-facing applications.
And the Reddit user noted that these integration jobs heavily require modern web languages like TypeScript or knowledge of DevOps deployment, which traditional math-heavy data scientists often don't have. So the entire skill paradigm is shifting sideways.
It is. But we must be careful not to alienate the non-technical listener here.
I completely agree. If I'm a listener right now and I'm a mid-level marketing manager or an HR generalist or a supply chain coordinator and I have absolutely zero coding background, I hear LLM API or TypeScript and my eyes completely glaze over.
Naturally.
I just assume the tech revolution has passed me by. What does AI literacy actually mean for the non-technical professional?
This is perhaps the most important concept we will discuss today. For the non-technical professional, AI literacy has absolutely nothing to do with writing Python code or understanding transformer architecture.
Okay, that's a relief.
AI literacy is strictly about workflow automation. It is the ability to use consumer-facing conversational tools like ChatGPT, Claude, or industry-specific AI agents to radically accelerate the speed and quality of your own daily tasks.
Let's ground this in a real mechanism. Give me a concrete example of what a non-technical person is actually doing with this.
Let's take the HR generalist you mentioned. Traditionally, if an HR generalist needs to draft 50 customized onboarding emails for new hires across different departments, it might take them 3 or 4 hours of copying, pasting, and editing templates.
Right. Standard busy work.
Exactly. With AI literacy, that generalist uses a technique called few-shot prompting. They feed the AI 3 examples of perfectly written past emails. They provide a spreadsheet of the new hires' names and roles, and they prompt the AI to generate all 50 emails, perfectly customized, matching the corporate tone in roughly 3 seconds.
That's incredible. I'll give another example.
Please do.
If you are a supply chain coordinator, AI literacy means you stop spending 2 days manually comparing pricing rows in a messy Excel spreadsheet of vendor quotes. Instead, you feed the raw data file into Claude 3, and you ask it to instantly identify pricing anomalies, highlight vendors who changed their terms, and generate a summary report for your manager.
Yes. The fundamental mindset shift for the listener is this. AI is your assistant, not your replacement. You must learn to manage the algorithmic assistant before the algorithmic assistant is used by your employer to replace you.
So when you walk into an interview in 2026, you can't just say, I'm a hard worker. You need to be able to explicitly say, in my last role, I used AI tool X to execute task Y 40% faster than traditional methods, which saved my department Z amount of dollars.
Exactly.
If you can articulate the mechanics of how you use AI to generate a productivity dividend, your value to an employer skyrockets.
Which actually brings up a fascinating, albeit legally complex subculture that this technological leverage has created.
Oh, you're talking about the overemployed community?
Yeah.
We found this wild subculture on Reddit. These are people secretly working multiple full-time remote corporate jobs simultaneously.
It's really quite something.
There was a guy in DevOps and reliability engineering who claims to be working 5 full-time jobs at the exact same time, and he isn't working 100 hours a week. He used AI scripting to completely automate his own server maintenance and monitoring routines across all 5 companies. The companies think he is grinding at his desk 8 hours a day, but his algorithmic agents are doing the heavy lifting while he collects 5 massive tech salaries.
It illustrates the extreme end of AI leverage.
Oh.
And it raises a profound economic question. Will the AI-enabled overemployed become the new millionaire class of the late 2020s?
That's a real possibility.
Much like highly skilled tradespeople or independent contractors were celebrated in previous decades, these individuals are acting as independent algorithmic enterprises.
So I have a very direct question for you. If I am that mid-level professional right now sitting in my living room listening to this, and I have zero technical background, but I am terrified of the skills confidence gap, what is the one specific thing I should spend my weekend doing so I don't get left behind?
The single highest return on investment activity you can engage in this weekend is to pick one advanced conversational AI model, subscribe to ChatGPT Plus or Claude 3, and spend 10 hours intensely studying and practicing advanced prompting frameworks.
Break that down. What is an advanced prompting framework?
So most people treat AI like a Google search bar. They type in a vague sentence and get a generic answer. Advanced prompting is learning how to program the AI with natural language.
Okay, how?
Learn how to assign the AI a specific persona. Act as a senior logistics analyst with 20 years of experience. Learn how to provide deep context before asking a question. Master the few-shot prompting we discussed earlier, where you provide the exact formatting examples you wanted to output.
Right.
Learn how to chain prompts together so you force the AI to reason through a complex problem step by step, rather than jumping to a hallucinated conclusion. Stop treating it like a search engine and start treating it like a brilliant, hyper-competent, but incredibly literal-minded intern.
I love that. Treat it like an intern.
Exactly. If you master the mechanism of managing that intern, you completely future-proof your administrative capabilities.
Give it context, give it examples, and give it a persona. That is incredibly actionable advice. Okay, so knowing how to use these new tools is step one of the roadmap. Step two is knowing where to apply them.
Yes, the where is crucial.
Because the data shows that while some industries are aggressively shrinking, others are experiencing an absolute boom. If you've been laid off, the wisest move might not be fighting your way back into the exact same sector you just left.
Strategic pivoting is essential in a structural reallocation. Despite the highly publicized cuts dominating the tech and finance sectors, there is explosive growth happening in areas of the physical economy.
Like where?
The spring 2026 job forecast from Pride staff, combined with analytics from the Abilene Christian University report, outline massive, unfulfilled demand in healthcare.
I assume the mechanics of that are purely demographic. The boomer generation is aging rapidly, requiring an immense expansion of medical infrastructure.
It is entirely demographic. The demand for registered nurses, home health aides, and crucially, healthcare administrators who can manage these complex hospital networks is surging.
And what else?
Then you have the skilled trades. There are over 81,000 openings yearly for electricians alone.
And the compensation is reflecting that scarcity. Electricians are looking at a median salary well over $62,000, and with overtime in commercial construction, that easily pushes into the six figures.
Easily.
But the area of growth that surprised me the most in the data was manufacturing.
The manufacturing boom is one of the most significant macro trends of the decade. It is being driven by a geopolitical and logistical phenomenon known as nearshoring.
Let's trace the domino effect of nearshoring for the listener. Over the last 40 years, the prevailing corporate strategy was to offshore manufacturing to Asia to capitalize on cheap labor.
Right.
But recently, a combination of massive geopolitical tariffs, which we'll discuss later, combined with the extreme shipping delays we saw during the pandemic, fundamentally broke the math of that strategy.
You've outlined the exact causal chain. Companies realize that having a supply chain stretched across the Pacific Ocean is an unacceptable risk to their operations. So they're moving those supply chains out of volatile overseas markets and bringing them back to North America, basically, nearshoring them.
Which is completely reshaping the domestic industrial landscape. But they aren't just reopening the sweaty, manual labor textile mills of the 1900s.
No, not at all.
The manufacturing facilities being built in the U.S. right now are incredibly advanced, and that explains why roles like industrial engineers, automation technicians, and EHS managers are suddenly so highly sought after.
Let's look at why EHS environmental health and safety managers are critical. These nearshored facilities are heavily automated. They are robotics-driven environments where multi-ton robotic arms are operating alongside human technicians.
Sounds dangerous.
It can be. Setting up and managing the strict safety protocols for a modern AI-driven assembly line requires intense oversight. The robotics require strict parameters, and human workers need rigorous safety training to interact with them safely.
So the U.S. manufacturing boom isn't just about assembly line jobs. It's about the highly technical jobs required to manage the machines doing the assembly.
Precisely.
And interestingly, even within the broader tech sector, which we know is currently bleeding white-collar jobs, there are distinct pockets of massive growth.
Absolutely. The data indicates that the top growth roles within tech include the AI engineers we discussed earlier, who are commanding median salaries well over $101,000.
That's a great living.
It is.
Yeah.
There's also a massive shortage of cybersecurity analysts. As companies deploy more AI agents that autonomously access databases, the attack surface for hackers expands exponentially, requiring a massive increase in security personnel.
That makes total sense.
But perhaps the most interesting high-growth role is the AI product manager.
Let's distinguish between an AI engineer and an AI product manager, because I think a lot of our non-coding listeners could pivot into the latter.
The distinction is vital. While basic coding tasks and middle management tracking roles are being entirely automated by efficiency mandates, AI product managers are being heavily recruited.
What do they actually do?
An AI product manager does not necessarily write the code. They are the strategic visionaries. They spend their time understanding the end user's friction points. They envision how a tool should work, they design the user interface strategy, and they guide the engineering team on what needs to be built to solve the human problem.
I see where you're going with this. In an age where the actual cost of generating software code is plummeting towards zero because AI can write it instantly, the code itself is no longer the scarce resource.
Exactly.
Human creativity, strategic empathy, and the ability to define the right problem to solve are at a massive premium. If the AI is the engine generating the horsepower, the product manager is the steering wheel. The car still needs someone to steer it.
That is an excellent analogy. The technical execution is becoming commoditized, but the strategic direction is incredibly valuable. And for displaced workers who recognize these trends and need to pivot quickly, there are highly effective short-term training paths available that do not require going back into massive student debt for a 4-year degree.
The Yotru post-layoff guide highlights some fantastic pragmatic paths. If you want to capitalize on the nearshoring logistical boom, you can obtain a commercial driver's license, a CDL, in 3 to 8 weeks.
Right, the demand for moving freight domestically is immense.
Yep. If you want to build the physical infrastructure, you can get basic commercial welding certifications in a few months.
Or, if your goal is to stay within an office or remote environment, but pivot to the high-growth IT security sector, you can pursue foundational IT certifications.
Like what?
The CompTIA A+ certification, or the Google IT Support Professional certificate. Those can be completed in 3 to 6 months of focused study, providing a direct entry point into network administration and cybersecurity support.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Looking at all this data, there is a profound irony to the modern workforce that I just can't shake.
What's that?
We spent the last 20, maybe 30 years pushing absolutely everyone, an entire generation, into white-collar, laptop-class desk jobs. We sold this narrative that the only path to economic safety and prestige was a cubicle and an Excel spreadsheet.
We really did.
And now, in 2026, the safest, highest-paying careers with the most impenetrable job security are the ones where you actually have to touch something physical in the real world, like an HVAC unit or an electrical panel or a patient in a hospital bed, because, at least for now, ChatGPT cannot run wire through a ceiling or take your blood pressure.
It is a stunning reversal of the knowledge worker supremacy that dominated the early 21st century. The physical world has aggressively reasserted its economic value specifically because it is the hardest domain for software to automate. The friction of the physical world is the ultimate job security.
Okay, so let's synthesize where the listener is on this roadmap. They have secured their financial runway and protected their seed corn.
Check.
They've spent the weekend upskilling in advanced AI prompting frameworks to boost their leverage.
Yeah.
They've looked at the macro data and identified a high-growth industry to target maybe healthcare administration or nearshored manufacturing. Now they have to actually go out and get the job.
Which is where the entire game changes.
Big time. Because applying for a job in 2026 looks fundamentally different than it did even in 2023.
It is an entirely different ecosystem. The hiring process is no longer a human-to-human interaction at the entry point.
Yeah.
It is completely dominated by applicant tracking systems, known as ATS, and advanced AI screening agents.
Which means the old rules are dead.
Completely dead.
Yeah.
If you are just typing up a standard PDF resume in Microsoft Word and blasting it out on job boards hoping a human HR rep reads it, you're literally throwing your application application into a digital black hole.
You have to arm yourself with the exact same technology they're using to screen you. And the tools available for job seekers right now are mind-blowing. We've got platforms like Resi.
Let's explain the mechanism behind Resi,
Yeah.
actually. When an employer uploads a job description to their ATS, the system creates a semantic taxonomy, a map of specific keywords, skills, and exact phrasing it expects to see.
Okay.
Resi is an AI-powered resume builder that analyzes the exact job description you're applying for, identifies that semantic map, and dynamically optimizes the keywords and bullet points in your resume so that it passes the initial algorithmic filter.
It's essentially SEO, search engine optimization, but for your career.
Exactly.
And then there are organizational tools like Teal HQ. Teal acts as a centralized AI hub. It tracks every job you apply to, but more importantly, it uses AI to rapidly customize your base resume for every single distinct application in seconds, ensuring you are constantly presenting the exact profile the specific ATS is looking for.
And the leverage extends far beyond just resume optimization. Candidates are using platforms like Crystal to gain an edge in the actual interpersonal interactions.
How does Crystal work?
Crystal is a behavioral analytics tool. It scrapes the public web presence of the specific hiring manager you are going to interview with their LinkedIn profile, their published articles, public company videos.
That's slightly terrifying.
It is a bit dystopian, but it runs natural language processing on how they speak and write to map their personality onto the DISC assessment framework.
Okay, so it gives you a profile.
Right, it then gives you a brief before the interview. This manager is highly analytical and impatient. Speak in data points and get straight to the bottom line. Or, this manager is highly collaborative. Emphasize team cohesion. You can adapt your communication style before you even shake their hand.
That is wild. And candidates are pairing that with tools like Perplexity AI, conducting incredibly deep, instantly cited research on a company's market position, their recent quarterly earnings, and their competitors, so they walk into the room with the knowledge base of an insider.
It's a mandatory preparation now.
But the craziest advancement in the hiring gauntlet is the interview prep. We read about AI mock interview tools like Final Round AI, Verve AI, and a platform called SpectraSeek by Introspect AI.
SpectraSeek is particularly noteworthy because it highlights a major shift in how the companies themselves are conducting the actual initial screening interviews. A massive percentage of Fortune 500 companies are no longer using human recruiters for round one interviews. They're using agentic AI.
Let's define agentic AI clearly. This isn't just a chatbot reading a script, is it?
No. In the past, an automated interview was just a static video recording. A prompt would appear on a screen, you would talk into your webcam for 2 minutes, and it was recorded for a human to watch later.
I remember those. Very awkward.
Right. Agentic AI means the AI has agency, it is goal-directed, and can operate independently. Companies use conversational agentic AI interviewers that listen to your answer, analyze it in real time, and adapt dynamically.
Oh, wow. So it actually listens.
Yes. If you give a vague answer about a project timeline, the AI will independently formulate a targeted follow-up question to probe deeper into your methodology, just like a real, aggressive human recruiter would.
Which means tools like SpectraSeek aren't just giving you generic practice, they are utilizing the exact same underlying technology that the companies use. You are literally practicing your sparring with the robot that will eventually be interviewing you for the job.
Exactly. It levels the playing field.
And when you get to that interview, whether you are staring down an agentic AI or a human hiring manager, you need a highly specific strategy for how you talk about yourself.
You really do.
Cherry Beckert, the advisory firm, released some fantastic tactical tips for executive and professional job seekers in this 2026 market. The first thing they emphasize is shifting your resume and your speaking points to be outcomes first, tools last.
This is a critical distinction. In the past, people would just list a block of software they knew at the bottom of their resume. Excel, Salesforce, Tableau. Right, in 2026, everyone assumes you can use software. You must lead with the business impact. You don't say proficient in Salesforce. You say, increased Q3 closing margins by 14% by restructuring the lead flow pipeline within Salesforce. State the margin you improved, then mention the tool you used to achieve it.
The outcome is what they are buying. Cherry Beckert also emphasizes preparing two undeniable proof stories.
A proof story is a tightly constructed narrative designed to survive intense scrutiny. It follows the STAR method: situation, task, action, result, but it focuses heavily on quantifiable metrics.
Give me an example.
You need to be able to tell a story about a specific crisis you navigated, detailing exactly what you did, and concluding with a verifiable metric of success. Furthermore, in 2026, a massive component of your proof story must demonstrate your hybrid work collaboration skills.
Right, because work is decentralized. You have to prove you can manage complex projects, keep remote teams aligned, and drive outcomes without physically standing over someone's desk. But what about the big, scary question that every laid-off worker dreads? Why are you looking for a new role? Or directly, why are you laid off?
Final Round AI's guide offers a brilliant framework for this. They emphasize that you must write and memorize a 2 to 3 sentence explanation that showcases ownership without blame. You must strip all emotion and bitterness from your answer.
So you don't complain about your former boss or the company's terrible strategy.
Never. You deliver a factual macroeconomic statement. You say something like, I was part of a company-wide restructuring that eliminated 3,000 roles as the division shifted its strategic focus toward automated infrastructure. I am incredibly proud of the 20% revenue growth my team drove while I was there, and now I am looking for an environment where I can apply those growth strategies to a new product.
It's clean. It's factual. It acknowledges the layoff and immediately pivots back to the value you bring to the table.
Yes, exactly.
And as we discussed earlier with the invisible unemployment data, layoffs carry almost zero stigma in 2026 due to their sheer frequency. The hiring manager interviewing you probably survived 3 rounds of layoffs themselves. They understand it's a structural macroeconomic event, not a reflection of your personal competence.
It is entirely normalized.
I have to push back on this entire ecosystem, though. Let's look at the big picture of what we are describing here.
Okay, let's hear it.
I am a candidate. I am using an AI like Resi to map the semantic taxonomy of my resume. I am using Teal to customize it. I am using Crystal to analyze the manager's personality. I am using SpectraSeek to practice my answers.
Right.
And on the other side of the firewall, the company is using an ATS AI to filter my resume and an agentic AI to conduct my first interview. Are we not just entering a bizarre proxy war where my AI is just talking to the employer's AI?
It's a valid concern.
If everyone is using these exact same tools to optimize themselves into the perfect candidate, doesn't everyone just end up sounding like a perfectly polished, entirely homogenized robot? How does a human actually stand out?
It is a highly astute observation, and it highlights the greatest genuine risk of the 2026 job search. If you rely too heavily on algorithmic optimization, you do become homogenized.
These sound like ChatGPT.
Exactly. You sand off all your rough edges until there is nothing left for an employer to grab onto. The algorithmic tools are mandatory to get you past the initial digital filters. But the way you actually win the job offer in an AI-mediated hiring process is by injecting extreme, verifiable human specificity that an AI could never invent.
Okay, I love this concept. Give me a concrete example of human specificity versus algorithmic homogeneity.
An AI-generated, homogenized answer to a problem-solving question sounds like a string of corporate buzzwords. It says, I proactively optimized cross-functional logistics to enhance supply chain synergies.
Which sounds perfect, but it means absolutely nothing.
It's pure air. A human operating with extreme specificity speaks in lived, gritty experiences.
Okay, let's hear the human version.
A human says, when the massive port strike hit the East Coast last October, my primary container of vital components was frozen in a ship off the coast of New Jersey. Over a weekend, I manually mapped out a secondary supplier in Mexico, negotiated a temporary contract, and rerouted 40 pallets via specialized freight carrier, saving the company $1.2 million in missed delivery penalties.
Wow. Yeah, that's completely different.
An AI cannot invent the stress of a port strike. An AI cannot fake the nuanced relationship capital required to secure a last-minute vendor in Mexico.
Human specificity. You stand out by demonstrating emotional intelligence, genuine curiosity about the specific friction the hiring manager is facing, and an authentic personality that someone actually wants to spend 40 hours a week working with.
Right.
The AI gets your resume out of the digital black hole. Your human specificity is what convinces them to hand you the contract.
That is the exact formula for success.
All right, so standing out isn't just about how you present your skills in an interview. As we dive into the final massive shift in our data, we find that in 2026, standing out is also about where you are physically located and how you navigate the much broader global economic currents.
Because the job market does not exist in a vacuum. Your career is heavily dictated by geopolitics and macroeconomic restructuring. We pulled reports from the CIO Investment Club and Paul Hastings to map this out, and the data is pretty stark.
Let's get into it.
The global economy is currently facing extreme supply-side volatility.
And this volatility is coming from multiple compounding angles. We have the demographic constraints we touched on earlier. The populations of major industrialized nations are aging rapidly, shrinking the available labor force and forcing companies to rethink where they operate.
Yes.
We have shifting interest rate dynamics altering how companies borrow money. But the absolute biggest disruptors to the global job market are policy-driven trade realignments.
We must look at the historical data here to understand the mechanism of this shift. The reports indicate that U.S. tariff rates under the Trump administration experienced an unprecedented jump, moving from a historic average of roughly 2.4% at the end of 2024 to 16.8% by late 2025.
A 16.8% tariff fundamentally alters the mathematics of global trade. And the data shows the immediate result. Trade between the U.S. and China dropped by 35%. That is a massive structural decoupling of the world's two largest economies.
And this decoupling triggers secondary effects in the global financial system. We're seeing accelerated de-dollarization trends led by the BRICS nations and China, who are attempting to conduct bilateral trade outside the U.S. dollar system.
Which creates a lot of uncertainty.
Exactly. This geopolitical instability is forcing institutional investors to diversify their capital geographically, moving away from a pure U.S. concentration to hedge their bets.
And for you, the listener trying to chart their career, this macroeconomic restructuring has profound geographic implications. If you look at the U.S. employment map in 2026, the traditional coastal tech hubs, places like San Francisco, Seattle, and New York, are bleeding white-collar jobs.
They really are.
The new boom towns for job seekers are mid-sized metropolitan areas that have specific infrastructure advantages.
Wallet Hub and CBS News recently highlighted a prime example: Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Which surprised me initially, but then I connected the dots on the mechanisms we've been discussing. Pittsburgh isn't just a random city experiencing a boom.
No, it's very deliberate.
They lost their legacy steel industry decades ago, and local leadership deliberately pivoted their massive university infrastructure like Carnegie Mellon and the UPMC hospital network into becoming a world-class hub for healthcare, education, and robotics.
You've identified the exact catalyst. Pittsburgh currently leads the nation in per capita job openings because it sits at the intersection of the two highest growth industries: advanced healthcare to serve an aging demographic, and the robotics engineering necessary for the nearshoring manufacturing boom.
It's perfect timing for them.
It is. They employ close to 280,000 workers in the education and health services sector in that region alone.
It's an economic fortress. Texas remains a massive hub for corporate relocation due to tax incentives. And the North Carolina Research Triangle, the area connecting Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill, remains a top destination, specifically for biotech, advanced research, and finance professionals who are fleeing the high costs of the coasts for a lower cost of living and immense job security.
And we must recognize that this restructuring is not just an American phenomenon. The tech cuts and industrial shifts are entirely global.
Right. The layoff trackers reflect this globally. We see Ericsson, the telecom giant in Sweden, cutting 1,900 jobs. ASML, the massive semiconductor equipment manufacturer in the Netherlands, cutting 1,700 jobs. WiseTech in Sydney, Australia, cutting 2,000 roles.
But how multinationals are responding to the tariffs and trade tensions dictates exactly where the new jobs are being created globally. According to the Paul Hastings analysis, major manufacturing companies are not fully exiting China because the internal Chinese consumer market is simply too large to abandon.
So what are they doing?
They are executing a bifurcated strategy. They are shifting low-value, highly labor-intensive production out of China to ASEAN countries, nations like Vietnam, Thailand, and Malaysia, to avoid the massive U.S. tariffs.
Right, spreading the risk.
Exactly. However, they are keeping their high-level research and development centers and their domestic sales operations inside China.
So if we trace this complex geopolitical domino effect back to the listener's career strategy, understanding the geopolitical stability of your specific industry and your specific employer is now a core career competency.
It truly is.
If you work in supply chain management for a company that relies 100% on components manufactured in a single nation, and that nation is currently in an escalating trade war, your career is at massive systemic risk in 2026.
It is a critical risk factor. You must evaluate a potential employer's geopolitical exposure just as rigorously as you evaluate their balance sheet or their culture. On the flip side of that coin, companies whose products are designed to thrive in an environment of geopolitical tension are surging.
Palantir is the perfect example of this. They are a massive data analytics company deeply adjacent to the defense and government sectors. Because global pensions are high, their military and logistics analysis software is in unprecedented demand.
And Palantir's internal culture is highly indicative of the type of worker who succeeds in this chaotic environment. Fast Company recently did a deep dive into their figure-it-out onboarding culture.
It's a wild approach to talent management. They don't hand you a pristine manual. They bring in new hires, hand them an incredibly complex, ambiguous deployment project on week one, and essentially say, we don't care how you solve this. Get the hang of it and build a solution.
It is the ultimate skills-based, high-adaptability, high-pressure environment.
Yes, it is.
It is a deliberate filter. It selects for exactly the type of professional who will survive the 2026 economy.
Yeah.
Someone who can be given ambiguous parameters, who can independently leverage AI and technological tools, and who can produce a concrete, measurable business result without needing their hand held by middle management.
Which ties perfectly back into the elimination of the bureaucracy tax we started with. Okay, so I have to ask a final, very practical question about geography.
Go ahead.
If I'm a listener looking at this Wallet Hub map of booming mid-sized cities, I see Pittsburgh surging in robotics. I see the Research Triangle booming in biotech. Should I actually consider packing up my life, selling my house, and moving across the country? Or has the remote work revolution advanced enough that physical geography doesn't dictate professional destiny anymore?
It is a deeply nuanced calculation that depends entirely on your career stage and your specific industry.
Okay, break it down.
Remote work remains highly viable, but primarily for deeply specialized senior engineers, elite consultants, or independent contractors whose output is highly measurable and easily verified. However, as the overall labor market has tightened, the leverage has shifted back to employers.
And employers hate paying for empty office buildings.
They really do. Many employers are enforcing strict return-to-office mandates, or at the very least aggressive hybrid models, to justify their massive commercial real estate investments and to foster the team cohesion that they feel was lost during the remote era.
So if you are remote, you are at a disadvantage.
If you are early in your career, or if you are actively trying to make an industry pivot, say, moving from marketing into tech, relocating to a high-growth geographic hub, like the Research Triangle, significantly increases what we call your surface area for serendipity.
Surface area for serendipity. I like that. Meaning you are physically in the coffee shops, at the local networking events, and in the room where spontaneous connections happen.
Exactly. You increase your proximity to the decision makers. Geography still matters immensely, especially if you are pivoting into the high-growth industries we identified, like healthcare infrastructure or near-shored manufacturing.
Because, to bring it back to our earlier point, you simply cannot remotely oversee an automated assembly line in Texas or wire a commercial electrical panel in Pittsburgh if you are sitting on a laptop in a coffee shop in California. The physical world requires physical presence.
But the physical world has reasserted its demand for human capital.
All right, this has been an incredibly dense, profound journey through a very chaotic macroeconomic landscape. We covered a massive amount of ground today.
We certainly did.
The world is undeniably shifting under our feet. The tectonic plates are moving, but we promised you a roadmap at the beginning of this deep dive, and I think we have successfully built one.
To synthesize the strategic path forward for the listener, first, you must protect your financial runway. Build your crisis budget. Understand the exact mechanics of your severance, aggressively guard your retirement accounts from early withdrawal penalties, and secure a stopgap role for health insurance if necessary.
That's the baseline.
Second, you must embrace artificial intelligence. Do not fear it as a replacement. Master advanced prompting frameworks to utilize it as an algorithmic assistant, closing your personal skills confidence gap.
Third, you have to target high-growth sectors. Look at the demographic data driving healthcare, the infrastructure demands driving skilled trades, the geopolitical nearshoring driving U.S. manufacturing, or pivot into the specialized AI product management roles.
Exactly. Fourth, you have to master the AI-driven application gauntlet. Optimize your resume for the ATS filters. Practice with agentic AI interviewers to refine your delivery, but ultimately win the room by highlighting your irreplaceable human specificity.
And finally, you must be geographically and geopolitically aware. Understand where global trade winds and tariffs are pushing corporate capital, and position yourself in the specific industries and mid-sized cities that are catching that massive wave of investment.
The 2026 job market is ruthless. It is highly transactional, and it is entirely driven by efficiency mandates. In this environment, adaptability is your ultimate alpha.
Adaptability is your alpha. That is the perfect summary. Now, before we sign off, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final provocative thought to mull over as you go about your week. We found this concept buried deep in the Structural Realignment Report's predictions for 2027. We spent a lot of time today talking about companies eliminating the bureaucracy tax, aggressively flattening their management structures, and cutting their full-time OPEX headcount.
Yes, the hollowing out of the traditional corporate structure.
Right. Well, the report predicts that because of this relentless drive toward lean operations, the future of high-earning, white-collar careers might not be about finding one perfect full-time employer to pledge your loyalty to for 10 years. Instead, we might be witnessing the massive rise of the fractional worker.
A fractional worker. It's a fascinating evolution of the labor market.
Imagine this. Instead of being an HR manager for one company, you become an independent, highly specialized HR expert equipped with immense AI leverage. Because you can automate so much of the workflow, you lease your skills to 3 different mid-sized companies simultaneously, working 10 to 15 hours a week for each of them.
Right.
They get top-tier talent without paying full-time benefits, and you get a diversified income stream that makes you completely immune to a single catastrophic layoff. If the traditional corporate ladder is gone, maybe the solution isn't trying to find a new ladder. Maybe you need to become your own enterprise. The question is, are you ready to operate as a business of one?
It represents a profound psychological shift. It requires moving away from the dependency of an employee mindset and fully embracing the autonomy and leverage of a service provider mindset.
It really does. So as you navigate this week, look at your skills and think about that. We started this deep dive talking about how the career ladder was missing rungs and how we were staring into a massive tectonic shift in the 2026 economy. It is volatile out there, and the old rules of climbing rung by rung simply do not apply to this landscape anymore. But hopefully, with this roadmap, you aren't just standing frozen on the fault line. You have the tools, the financial defense, and the AI leverage to build your own bridge right over it.
Stay adaptable, stay deeply curious, and keep learning the mechanisms behind the shifts.
Thanks for taking the deep dive with us. We'll see you next time.